In the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. In the days after September 11th, 2001, a 30-foot American flag was found hanging dangling, torn, and tattered on the scaffolding at 90 West Street, the building directly south from where the World Trade Center once stood. As the days went by, the white stripes turned gray from the smoke at Ground Zero. As the weeks went by, the flag was shredded as it flew loose across the scaffolding that was damaged in the collapse of the South Tower. In late October 2001, Charlie Vichers, the construction superintendent for the cleanup effort at Ground Zero, sent a crew up the scaffolding to retrieve the remains of the tattered American flag. His original intention was to have it honorably retired, as you would any American flag, torn and tattered. 7 years later, Charlie still had the pieces of the flag in a plastic bag at his house in Pennsylvania. And on the 9/11 anniversary 2008, when our foundation went to help rebuild the town of Greensburg, Kansas, wiped out by an F5 tornado, Charlie brought the pieces of the flag with him. When our volunteers were helping to rebuild Greensburg, all the little old ladies at the Senior Citizen Center in Greensburg, Kansas, stitched this flag back together. Where pieces of the original flag were missing, they sewed in American flags that survived the Greensburg, Kansas tornado. So they literally stitched together our history of what happened in New York in the aftermath of 9/11 being brought back to life 7 years later by folks in a small town in Kansas. That's what America is about. We estimate over 160 million Americans have seen or heard the story of the national 9/11 flag. In Arkansas, at our first stitching ceremony, Carlos Miranda, a Vietnam veteran who lost his son in Iraq, brought his son's medals and asked us, is it okay if I put my son's medals on the flag so he could stitch with me? In New Jersey, on September 14th, a 10-year-old girl who has no memory of her dad put a stitch in the flag and then looked at me and said, is my stitch permanent? Are you going to take it out? I said, no, it's going to be there forever. At a veterans group in Missouri, a woman broke down in tears and she said, when you look at the stitches, you see nothing but pure love. In Texas, this flag was sewed by soldiers and school kids who survived the shooting at Fort Hood, Texas. On Pearl Harbor Day, the Hawaii patch was sewn by World War II veterans on the deck of the USS Missouri in Pearl Harbor. On January 13th, this flag flew at the funeral for Christina Taylor Greene, the 9-year-old girl born on 9/11, killed in the Tucson shooting. The very next morning, this flag was sewn by the family of Martin Luther King Jr. at the King Center in Atlanta. On February 12th, President Lincoln's birthday, a piece of the American flag that Abraham Lincoln was laid on when he was shot at Ford's Theater was sewn into the national 9/11 flag. So as you see the white patch in the bottom right corner of the blue field with the blue threads, those blue threads came from the flag that cradled President Lincoln as he died. The next stitching ceremony was at the Kennedy Space Center. Members of our space program, an 11-week-old child from Michigan, stitched this flag. This flag has been sewn by survivors at Columbine, by survivors at the Oklahoma City National Memorial. The country saw this flag as the official flag for the Kentucky Derby. On Memorial Day weekend, a few weeks ago, a survivor of the Bataan Death March, a survivor of Pearl Harbor, a survivor of Utah Beach and the landing at Normandy, a Korean War veteran, and a Vietnam veteran who lost both legs when he stepped on a landmine, all got a chance to stitch the Kansas patch. There are so many stories. In a few weeks, we're going to sew this flag on Capitol Hill with most of the leadership of the House and Senate. In August, we'll stitch this flag at the base of Mount Rushmore. And our goal is to make this flag whole again by the 10th year anniversary of 9/11, at which point it's going to become part of the permanent collection of the National 9/11 Memorial Museum being built at the World Trade Center site. And our hope and our prayer is that for generations to come, this flag does not just tell the story about what happened on 9/11, but it tells the story of what happened on 9/12, when Americans came together to help each other recover. That's what this whole effort is about. We're honored to have some special folks who've served the local community and their country and the state And before we read the stories of our local nominees, I'd like to ask the Governor, the Secretary of State, and Deputy Treasurer Harris to place the first stitches in the Connecticut patch of the National 9/11 flag. As you might know, this patch was made of a flag that flew right here on the old State House. Governor?